Okay, Charlie, so I got some criticisms, if you could call them that, on an older video the other day. Apparently, it's one of these characters who is hung up on logic. Logic is the particular flavor preference for this character's attachment whoring. In this case, it's an attachment to an intellectual organizational system. It has to be logical. Yes, unfortunately, this is your affliction. An inflexible, obstinate adherence to rigid abstractions. Logic is the warm, soothing milk in this baby's bottle. I mean, just think of it. It has to be logical. I think it's safe to say that anyone who maintains that something has to be a certain way, with no exceptions, is at the very least completely uptight. No, it has to be this way. What kind of an egoic existence comes to mind when you hear something like that? We all know them. People with hang-ups. You know, old-fashioned, behind the times, out of date, conservative, traditionalist, conventional, conformist, bourgeois, straight-laced, fogyish, stuffy, a stick in the mud, a fuddy-duddy, aka a square. And called square specifically because of the square's clumsy, stiff contrast to the free-flowing circle, which is round, smooth, and able to roll. When we hear square, we think about someone who has a real hard time letting go and going with the flow, and cannot resist the constant, desperate compulsion to always feel compelled to strictly control things. Someone who is not fluid or secure in themselves, therefore is always finding something to object to or be offended by, and then throwing a selfish tantrum to vent all their pent-up frustrations of inadequacy and ineptitude. So this outraged critic comments on the apparent illogical configuration of the following statement from the video. Quote, "Because although the nihilist can adjust and find a way through life without investing into subjective applications, to actually do so to an extreme is a little stringent, and perhaps taking the implications of nihilism too far. Even though we are engulfed in illusion, we should still be mindful to awareness and, dare I say, express love. And when I say love, I don't mean attachment or desperate dependency. This is desire, not real love. Love is real because it endures beyond attachment. Real love loves so much it cannot grasp, restrict, nor transgress the freedom of awareness for the sake of selfish desire. Nihilism is a good tool for shattering false attachments that are bogging us down, but we don't need to be so heavy-handed and take it so far that we are denying our own awareness and its utility as a wellspring for the outpouring of love that can heal all wounds. This is a silly use of skepticism. At the very least, you know you are aware, and you really can't say any more than that. And it appears that there are other perspectives that are aware also. And although you can't be certain of that, you can't deny your own experience. And so, knowing this, you should be loving and kind to yourself and others, because the experience of the existential agent is the only real thing that composes an existence. And if you want to be stubborn and deny your own existence, then who, may I ask, is making this denial?" Unquote. So the critic comments on this and complains, saying, quote, "The philosophy is illogical. If love is not an attachment, then I surely don't know what is, since I don't feel or know it. You say denying love is denying existence. This is completely insane. Your inner wisdom is illogical and cannot be understood. Unquote. Well, right off the bat, this critic's malfunction, which is a common problem among many people with a high degree of intellect, by the way, is simply psychopathy. If one does not understand what love is and claims to not know it or feel it or have any clue as to what its function is in existence, it's due to an existential impairment, an inability to connect to anything that falls outside of primitive, mundane, myopic self-interest, whose only concern is immediate satisfaction, even if at the expense of another creature's welfare. This is why intellectualism, with its heavy reliance on organizational abstractions as reality, has the capacity to turn egos into cold, calculated, heartless psychopaths that we all know of today. It's due to a bit of negative nihilism inherent in rationalism. That is, that feelings and emotions are inconsequential due to their incongruence with logic. Hence, the value of feelings and emotions can be negated, which is further compounded by the fact that logic reinforces mind-independent reality, therefore leading the existential explorer to a false assumption that the appearances in sensory perception are external devices on which the imagined separated systemic abstractions are modeled, as opposed to the truth that objects and thoughts are both simply aspects in the same field of the mind. So it's this type of adherence to an erroneous premise that sometimes ends up nurturing psychopathy in other sociopathic personalities. Objectifying existence coupled with negating the value of subjective feelings is a recipe for suffering. Logic seems to indicate that it's interested in establishing the truth of reality via facts, but surely cannot honestly make this claim, for so long as it is performing its methodology under a false premise. And I'm even going to take it a step further and say that, for so long as mankind is practicing logic under a materialist mindset, no major significant breakthroughs will be made. And the truth isn't what's being pursued. Only when mankind begins to operate and practice his methodology under an idealist mindset will astounding breakthroughs unfold. And then the truth can honestly be said to be the legitimate goal of mankind. But until then, mankind is wallowing in falsehoods. Another thing to understand is existence isn't manifest due to a logical reason. Don't conflate philosophy with logic. There's nothing rational or reasonable about the desire to exist. Existence is irrational, and the need to exist doesn't originate from an intellectual exercise. Creatures don't fuck because it's logical. More like existence springs from an irrational, incomprehensible static potential, and then desire manifests characters that then go on to seek ways to organize it, thereby focusing their attention on the manifested appearances while ignoring their source, which reinforces the idea that perhaps reality came from some universal logic. Nice way of projecting your mental masturbation onto the universe, huh? And of course, another reason why logicians want to negate feelings from the equation is because it sheds significance to the implications of the introspective source, which the logician wants to so desperately deny, and negate. Another dark application of negative nihilism. He would much rather life be sourced from a cold, ambiguous, impersonal, external material force that somehow just randomly stumbled and accidentally spilled life into existence. Apparently, this idea reinforces logic and mind-independent reality, which serves as the underlying justification for his predatory proclivities. This is the externalization mindset, that which always seeks to infer or attribute reality to an extrinsic factor. But logic isn't universal, as there is no such place as a universe existing out there. At most, logic is a limited subjective tool, and certainly not the all-encompassing be-all, end-all tool the logician wishes it could be. It's mostly unimpressive, because although it deals with facts, the foundation of logic itself is a form of circular reasoning due to its inability to identify its significance outside of the mind. What is logic? The quality of being justified by reason. Oh, okay. And what is reason? The power of the mind to think, understand, and form judgments by a process of logic. So logic is reason, and reason is logic. That's circular. Like a dog chasing its own tail. Perhaps it's a case of the old chicken and the egg question. Which came first, logic or reason? Nice try, but it's another false premise. This question assumes that existence comes from an objectified aspect, and now it's simply a matter of just determining which object came first. Only existence didn't originate from an object, so the question of the chicken or the egg is wrong either way. Nor did existence come from mental abstractions. Hence, it's not even a question of reason or logic. Existence didn't come from anything. This only seems to be the case when one thinks about the stream of sense perceptions as reality, and then assumes this reality must exist outside of the mind. Awareness is reality, and is its own origin. When you think of it in terms of dreaming, it can be less confusing. When you are in a dream and trying to figure out what makes the dream existence possible, will the correct answer be found by searching for the right dream object to attribute it to? Will the correct answer be found through forming dream concepts or learning dream knowledge? No. In fact, abstractions are the primary function that misleads a dreamer further into delusion. And this is the part that the rational, reasonable logician can't seem to wrap his intellectualism around. Uncovering the truth doesn't involve learning or gathering knowledge. Truth about reality is not found in studying the so-called physical phenomena found in sensory illusion. The truth is uncovered by breaking the conditioning that composes the externalization mindset. And the main practice used to facilitate this deprogramming is detachment. This is when you begin to let go of all the comfortable impediments that keep the mind unclarified. Yes, they are comfortable, which is why it seems so difficult to let what is so easy and free just happen. We are afraid to loosen our tight grip. So getting back to the criticism, it doesn't have to be this way or that way. Get over the hang-up. Saying the philosophy is illogical isn't indicative of anything significant. Philosophy doesn't have to be logical. If you are so hung up on logic, then perhaps you should converse with mathematicians instead of philosophers. As I said in the video, real love certainly isn't an attachment. So yes, you surely don't know what love is. I guess you don't understand the deeper wisdom behind the whole "if you love something, set it free" thing, do you? It's worth a look. Not being a possessive attachment whore is a prerequisite to natural love. You quoted me as saying, quote, "denying love is denying existence," unquote. Yet I never made that statement. So, insane or not, it doesn't appear to tie into the argumentative equation. Quote correctly or don't quote at all. What I did say is to deny awareness is to deny your own existence. And if that's insane, please make a case for why. But my statement had nothing to do with letting nihilism become an attachment. The point of nihilism isn't to make it into a rigid ideology. The point of nihilism isn't to become attached to the act of negating value for the sake of negating. The point of nihilism is to employ it as a tool of disassociation with the false, thereby enabling intimacy with the truth. Nihilism is really just another way of referencing detachment. Hence, being a tool, one really can't become a nihilist. No more than using a hammer makes you a hammerist. If you identify as a hammerist, you are definitely missing the point of the tool. So the point of nihilism is to employ it in a positive sense, not a negative sense. We don't negate existential utilities. We negate the attachment to existential utilities. People get the wrong idea about this all the time. Hence, things like self-denial, abstinence, and avoidance come into play. But this is negative nihilism. We are existential beings, so it's silly to try to negate any experience. The objective is to negate the attachment to any experience. Knowing this, it's obvious that the overall purpose to existence originates from a sort of cosmic need, if you will, to contrive the circumstances to have feelings and to live experiences in, which is contrary to the truth of our fundamental nature and is illusory, but is a game awareness apparently likes to play with itself, so as to not feel boredom and loneliness, and perhaps occupy itself with anything it can imagine. The overall purpose, if there can even be said to be one, doesn't originate from logic. Logic is useful to help build things in existence and understand certain conditional existential truths, but existence itself is a cry of love. We want to feel love, and this want is totally irrational. But whoever said existence needed to be rational? Because logic says so? And so, what is the context of logic? It isn't an object. It is awareness itself. We didn't spring into existence because an external universe did some math. We didn't come into being because it was reasonable. If you live life long enough, you begin to realize that life being sustained as a result of some developmental progression of forces and materials stemming from the fluctuations of external random chaos is very unreasonable. The chances of this occurring as an objective configuration are so extreme and outlandish and encompass such a statistical monstrosity, Occam's razor alone disqualifies it. The more simpler explanation that requires no assumptions is that existence is fundamentally a mental phenomena, a contention that is supported on every front, and is actually already the case before any ideas about objectivity or mind-independent reality can even be postulated.